Hello everyone, we are group 5 from the class. On this occasion, we would like to present to you our analysis of the poetry Last Duchess. For information, we made this video to complete our poetry final project assignment. Before we start, let me introduce the member of my group. There are me, Wayan Meniang with student number 085, Galih Pawitra with student number 086, Made Gayatri with student number 094, Vanesa Liu with student number 100, and Denaya Ayudhea Putri with student number 105. Without any further ado, let's get started.
That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece of wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. With "Please you sit and look at her," I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turn, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I. And seemed as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus. Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek. Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one, my favor at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say, just this and that you disgust me, here you miss, or there you exceed the mark. And if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse, even then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whene'er I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew, and I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. There she stands, as if alive. Will please you rise? We'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the Count Master's magnificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I vowed at starting, is my object. Nay, we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though. Taming a seahorse thought a rarity, which Claus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me.
So, what is My Last Duchess? My Last Duchess is a poem by Robert Browning and frequently anthologized as an example of the dramatic monologue. It is first appeared in 1842 in Browning's dramatic lyrics. The poem is set in the Italian Renaissance but could be interpreted as a critique of how women were treated in Victorian era and which is crowning word this book. This poem is generally believed to be based on the marriage of the Alfonso II the Eighth, Duke of Ferrara, and Lucrezia de Medici, Duchess of Ferrara.
My name is Galih Pawitra. My student number is 087 and I will be explaining about the theme and message in this poem by Robert Browning, My Last Duchess, and later on I will also be explaining about the historical event behind the poem and its connection to the present. Okay, starting with the theme and message. The theme of this poetry is jealousy. How, like, the Duchess is easily gets impressed and blushed of anything, which made the Duke jealous. And the other one is power. The social power the Duke has to take control of everything, including his marriage with the Duchess. In the poetry, it is implied that the Duchess is too easy to brush at any comments on her. Anything can make her happy, whether it's because a present the Duke gave to her or merely a sunset. The Duke said she would respond with the same words, with the same smile. This doesn't make the Duke happy, as she was made happy by things beyond him. This made him jealous and made her stop smiling at anything by killing her, unfortunately. And then about power. Throughout the poetry, the Duke is describing a painting of his former wife rather than the woman herself. But he still describes the painting itself as My Last Duchess, thereby eroding the differences between the art and the woman who inspired it. Both are essentially the same in the Duke's mind, or at least he'd prefer it if this were so. By treating women as objects to be possessed, the Duke can more readily dominate them, thus take control of them. This suggested a lot in the poem, like how it stated that the Duchess can only be blushed by the Duke and not anything else. Another thing is that when he thought that the painter had made her blush, the Duke blamed the Duchess for responding the painter filtration instead of blaming the painter. The Duke also takes control of the painting, where he mentioned about his power to the guests and who can see the painting about the curtain. That is all about theme and messages. Moving on to the next one.
Hello, I'm Made Gayatri with student number 094, and now I will explain about the poetic form that applied in My Last Duchess poem. And first of all, I will explain about the rhyme that applied on the poem. My Last Duchess is written in rhyming couplets. The rhymes are all perfect rhymes, and the themes of the poem is consistent throughout. It follows these patterns: AA, BB, CC, and DD. And so fourth right unit, the end of the poem. The rhyme is end rhyme, and rhyme is used to make the stanza melodious. The end of the sentences do not always align with the end of the actual lines of the poetry, and this gives the poem a more conversational quality. The opening lines of the poem demonstrate this. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as she were alive I call. Wall and call rhyme, but because the sentence with call is enjambed, the rhyme almost disappears. The line flows swiftly on to the next line in order to complete its sentence. The same can be said of many spots throughout the poem. Take lines in line 13 and 16. Are you to turn and ask those, sir? 'Twas not. Her husband presents only caught that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheeks, perhaps frappantly changed to say her mental lapse. Whilst it is easy to visually spot the rhymes when looking at the poem on the page, if you speak these lines out loud and respect the enjambment, you'll see how the rhymes are actually quite subtle and natural sounding. There's not any especially prevalent emphasis on the rhymes within these sentences, though they clearly appear in very regular patterns. And next, we go to the stanza. A stanza is a poetic form of some lines. There is one long stanza in the poem having 56 lines in it, and can be broken into heroic couplet. A heroic couplet is a pair of rhyming lines that is present in a heroic poem or that relates themes of heroism within a large poem with iambic pentameter. Robert Browning used iambic pentameter as the rhymes and the meter in this poem to show that there is a conversation going on, but it is about the inner thoughts of an individual speaker instead of a dialogue between more than one person. Iambic pentameter is the alternating weak strong rhythm within 5 groups found in a line. The poem consists of 28 heroic couplets. For example, strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and the passion of its earnest glance. And next we go to the alliteration. Alliteration, there's 2 kinds of alliteration. Those are assonance and consonance. First is consonance. Consonance is the repetition of consonant sounds in the same line, such as the sounds of ut in the together dancer, notice Neptune do, and the sounds of n in the count your master's known magnificence, and also the sounds of ut in the dropping of the daylight in the west, and the sounds of us as well in then all the smiles stopped together, there she stands. And the second one is about assonance. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds in the same line, such as the sounds of O in her wits to yours foreshoots and makes accuse, and the sound of E and O in of mine for dowry will be disallowed. So that's all from me about the explanation about poetic form, and for the next material will be presented by my partner. Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Vanesa Liu with the student number 100, and I'm going to present the figure of speech of the poem The Duchess. So the first figure of speech is simile from line 1 until 2, and the line is, "That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive." Simile is a device used to compare something with something else to make the meanings clear. The Duke compares the painting of the Duchess as it looks like they are really alive. And the next figure of speech that the poem uses is personification from lines 4 until 5. The line is, "Work busily a day and there she stands. Will it please you sit and look at her?" Personification is the attribution of a personal nature or human characteristic to something non-human, or the representation of an abstract quality in human form. The Duke personifies the painting of the Duchess throughout this poem. He refers to the painting as she, speaks of its hanging up as standing, and asks his guests to sit and look at her instead of it. And the next figure of speech is metaphor from line 17 until 19. The line is, "Paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flush that dies along her throat." A metaphor is a figure of speech that describes an object or action in a way that isn't literally true, but helps explain an idea or make a comparison. In this metaphor, the Duchess blush or the faint half-flush is the tenor or the thing that the metaphor describes, and the vehicle or the thing to which the tenor is compared is a separate living entity from her that lives and dies. Ostensibly, this sentence highlights the Duchess' beauty and lets the Duke boast that a famous painter thought his wife more beautiful than any painting. However, because the metaphor focuses on the fading or dying, it also functions as a type of foreshadowing for the Duchess' own fate. The Duke later let slip that he was so angry at the Duchess for her kindness to others, that he gave comments and all smiles stopped together, which, given that he's now shopping for a new wife, might mean that he had her killed.
A blush does not literally mean guy, and this metaphor, then which initially seems to merely praise her beauty, might actually hint at her bitter end. The imagery of the blush dying on her throat goes so far as to suggest the form of her death, that she might have been strangled. So that's all from me, and the next explanation will be explained by my
Hello, I'm Wayan Denaya Ayudhea Putri with student number 105, and I'm going to continue the presentation from my friend Vanesa about figure of speech of Putri, my Last Duchess. So through the line 24 until 56, I found 7 different types of figure of speech. The first one is hyperbole. This figure of speech used to exaggerate what you mean or emphasize a point. It is used to make something seem bigger or more important than it actually is. There is a line I found use hyperbole. The first one is, she looked on and her looks went everywhere in the line 24. This phrase is said to be an exaggeration from its true meaning, which is still looking around. And the next sentence, the dropping of the daylight in the west in the line 26. This phrase has the meaning of the sunset, but is overly described as the day is falling or dropping. Next is oxymoron. An oxymoron is when two words are used together in a sentence, but they seem to be in contrast with each other. The example is in the line 25. Sir, there was all one, my favor at her breast. Phrase all one is a pairing of opposing words that contradict each other. All means everyone or the whole, and often with plural verb forms. Meanwhile, one means a single person or thing. So this phrase is an oxymoron, which figuratively means that is everything. We move to the next slide. And the next figure of speech is irony. This is a literary device in which contradictory statements or situations reveal a reality that is different from what appears to be true. So I found 2 examples from this poetry. The first one is in the line 25 until 29. Sir, there was all one, my favor at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west. The book of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her. The white mole she rode with around the terrace, all and each. This stanza contains contradictory meaning where the things mentioned above are some examples of things that make the Duchess happy. However, it was considered a symbol of disloyalty by the Duke. The Duke has an interpretation that the things that make the Duchess happy are forms of disobedience. And there is a line and there is a stanza in line 39 until 41. This stanza implies that the Duke portrays the Duchess being stubborn and making excuses when he would confront her. On the contrary, the Duchess just stands up and justifies herself, being self-confident and refused to be controlled. But still, the Duke said she is making excuses. And the next figure of speech is similar. In a similar, two things which are dissimilar are compared with each other, which are introduced by words such as like, so, and as. There are 2 examples I found. The first one is in the line 32 until 34. The phrase indicated that the Duchess treated gift from the Duke on the same level as gifts from anyone else, which was an insult in his eyes. That is because the Duke's gift implies high social status and name with long history, which is superior than others. And then there is one in the line 46 until 47. The phrase, there she stands as if alive. This phrase implies that the Duke equates the painting with the Duchess, who is a living being, because the painting is very like alive. We move to the next slide. And the next figure of speech is euphemism. Euphemism is a figure of speech commonly used to replace a word or phrase that is related to a concept which might make others uncomfortable. There is one I found in this poetry. There is in the line 46.
There is a phrase, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. As described, this phrase indicates something that brings others to be uncomfortable when listening to it. In this line, the Duke indicated that the Duchess had died, which was most likely because of himself. And the next feature of speech is personification. In personification, non-living things, abstract ideas, or qualities are mentioned as humans or living things. There is one example I found in the line 46. Then all smiles stopped together. There she stands. The Duke personifies the painting throughout this passage by saying, there she stands, as though the Duchess herself and not her image in the painting is standing against the wall. Next, metaphor. This is a figure of speech that makes a comparison between two unlike things. There's a line there is an example in the line 52 until 53. Though his fair daughter self, as I avowed, at starting is my object, nay will go. The Duke exclaimed that the new bride is his object, demonstrate the idea that he equates his new bride with a dowry. She is literally an object, a good, about to exchange hands with an associated price. And then the other example is in the line 54 until 55. There's a phrase, notice Neptune though, taming a seahorse to a rarity. Neptune is the Roman god of the sea, and the statue represents dominance. As such, the statue perfectly reflects the Duke's opinion of himself. He sees himself as an all-powerful god who tames and subdues everything around him, whether wives or prospective in-laws. What's more, the statue is a rarity, further implying how special and powerful the Duke must be in order to be in possession of it. And I think that's all our presentation about figure of speech. And for the next material will be presented by my partner. Thank you.
Okay, back again with me, Galih, and this time I will be explaining about historical event and connection to the present, and also about the theme, which is jealousy and power, and how it's different from old age and modern era. So about the historical event. This poem was written by Robert Browning in the Victorian era of the second half of the 19th century. During that time, it's said that the social norms denied women the right to be fully independent human beings. If a man married a woman, the rights of the woman were legally given over to her husbands. Basically, marriage stole the identity of woman. Through this poem, Browning critiques such a viewpoint, presenting sexism, objectification, and taking control over them as dehumanizing processes that rob women of their full humanity. Comparing to the modern day, there's a lot of movements in the name of women's rights, like feminism, sexism, and discrimination against women are heavily defied. Now a woman can be a doctor, an engineer, and like pretty much anything. This in fact proves that women can be equal as men in the modern day. Now, regarding to the theme of this poem, which is the jealousy and power. It's not just in a relationship, actually. There's some differences about jealousy and power between the past and the present. Jealousy in the past usually only refers to an envy feeling in a relationship. Compared to today's jealousy, people can be jealous pretty much over anything, not even something they possessed. People jealous over a crush hanging out with someone they're not, or jealous over someone else's wealth, achievement, intelligence, etc. So the term jealous has a new meaning and cover a broader sense in the present compared to the old age. Now, in the past, or at least as portrayed by this poetry, when someone had power, they felt superior. Everything that's possessed and everyone they interacted with is viewed as an opportunity to expand the power base, but in a bad way. Essentially to dominate over everything, to have all power in their hands. Fast forward to the present, power mostly refers to someone in the top, like the leaders. A good leader should look after their people, to give comfort to them and make them feel safe. The age is advancing, the time is advancing. We always look for the better for everyone. That is all about my explanation about the historical event and the connection to the present. And yeah, that is all from me. Thank you.
Now we come to the last session in this presentation. Before we close the presentation, let me conclude the material for you. My Last Duchess is a poem written by Robert Browning, and it's set in the Italian Renaissance but could be interpreted as a critique of how women were treated in Victorian era. Just like other poems, we will find several poetic forms and figure of speech in this poem. However, there are several things that makes this poem special. First is it is an example of a dramatic monologue, and then there are 53 lines in this poem, but amazingly, we cannot find stanza break here. That's all the material that we can explain to you. We do apologize if we make any mistake. Thank you for your attention and goodbye.